Gold participants and listeners from around the world. Welcome to Gold Learning and welcome here to our chat with some of our amazing care providers and researchers in the maternal child health field. And today I have with me Dr. Vicki Culling. Hello, Vicki.
Hi, Kristen.
It is so wonderful to have you here with me today. And in our little series, we chat with our speakers here. And you will be presenting at the Gold Neonatal Online Conference. Isn't that correct?
That is right, yes.
It is so wonderful to have you here. And we will jump into your topic in just a little bit. But tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. Where in the world are you, Vicki?
I live in Wellington in New Zealand, and I'm from down in the South Island, and I married a wonderful man, and we live in the North Island. So Wellington is the capital city of New Zealand, and it's a lovely place to live.
I know Wellington a little bit myself. When I was between my BA and MA, I was doing an internship at the Ministry of the Environment in Wellington. I felt very blessed to be
Oh,
there. And
wow.
it is a wonderful, beautiful place, and I always hope to one day go back to New Zealand and visit again. So it's wonderful to have you here and hear your voice and feel a little bit closer to New Zealand today just by talking to you.
Oh, that's great. It's great, and it would be lovely to have you come over, Kristen.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So now tell us a little bit about your professional journey and your background here.
Sure. Well, I have a background in education and social work, and then when I was doing my PhD in women's health, I got married, and we were pregnant. I was pregnant with our first daughter, and when I was 10 days overdue, well, I went in to be induced, and we discovered that she had died. And so I often say that her little life changed my big life forever, because that experience, of course, shook the foundations of my life completely, of our lives, but it also taught me a lot, and I was able to use the skills that I have within education and social work, and her little life led me down a path I didn't expect to be on. And so now I work in the area of perinatal and infant loss, in training and education and in support for bereaved families. And I worked for an organisation we have here in New Zealand called SANS, and then set up my own business. And my goal within my business and all of the work I do is to change the landscape of support and information for perinatal and infant loss in New Zealand. That is my goal, and I'm trying to do that by providing good information to health and caring professionals, and I'm on a couple of government committees, and things are slowly changing. I can see that happening here in New Zealand, and I'm always a little bit impatient because I want it to change faster, but things are changing here, and I'm really pleased that that's happening. The government at the moment is looking at the support we give to bereaved parents, and I'm working on some projects with different government agencies. So yeah, I like to think this is the legacy of my daughter's life, and that makes me really proud and happy in the work that I do.
Well, Vicky, so I would like to say so sorry for your loss, and I loved how you said this. You put it so beautifully that her little life, that changed your big life there. Her um, and what you have accomplished, and now how you're helping other families who are experiencing loss in this area. And that's a wonderful legacy, and you worded that so beautifully. So thank you
Oh,
for
thank you.
sharing
Thank
your
you,
your
Kristen.
story there. And I have to tell you, I'm also a bereavement. I'm a licensed midwife and a bereavement doula also, and I'm very, interested in this topic, and I'm very much looking forward to the presentation that you will give us here at Gold. My question was, when you experienced your loss, were there any resources for you, or were there anything in place for you at all at that time? Or is this now all coming from your work um, that you're doing now?
Well, certainly the organisation SANS did exist when
Mhm.
our daughter died. Her name is Esther, and
Yes.
and we were given some little photocopied booklets that I have to admit to not reading straight away.
Hmm.
And I found the resources of people around me very helpful. But of course, I had just finished my master's in social work, and my
Hmm.
friends were social workers, and I had friends who were counsellors, so I had very, very good support. And it wasn't till I started attending SANS meetings that I realised that there were a lot of people around me in Wellington and throughout New Zealand who didn't have the great support that I did. Um, and so I was really lucky in 2006 to win a grant, a national grant, to work for a charity of my choice. And so I was paid to work for SANS full time. And in that time, I was able to secure funding, and we were able to improve our resources exponentially. And I used to say, bring them into the 21st century. And so we have really good resources now, and they are government funded. So every
Hmm.
family in New Zealand receives the same information pack with information about planning a funeral,
Hmm.
the next few days, grandparents, grief, fathers, siblings, transporting your baby.
Wonderful.
Um, so it's, yeah, so there was, it certainly has changed, and I'm proud to have been a part of that, but I didn't invent it. No, it was certainly there when for me, but it wasn't, there was no network or great framework throughout the country, and I've worked hard with other people to try and strengthen that.
The beautiful thing that you mentioned is that now everybody in the entire country has access to these resources. So it's not just like localized for Wellington, but for the entire country, right?
Yes, yeah, and it's just great that
That's wonderful.
no matter where someone is in New Zealand, we know that they're getting that information.
That is
Mm.
absolutely amazing. That's wonderful. That is such wonderful work you're doing there with your organization as well. Um, for care providers, I see this a lot. This is a topic that's it's a very obviously for many reasons a very difficult topics, and many care providers obviously struggle. They are not trained social workers or um, therapists, family counselors, but they're, in the medical field, and often they don't at all have any idea how to react, what to say. Should they
Mm.
say anything? Should they not say anything? How do they approach the grieving family? Um, so that's when this presentation comes in here, so, and so important. So can you tell us a little bit about what you will be presenting on it, and what can you tell any healthcare providers who are listening in here today who may have
Sure.
been confronted with this topic?
Well, I'd certainly agree with you. I've talked to different health and caring professionals over the years, and I'm always saddened to hear that they haven't had really good training within their training for their profession. So recently I just talked to some sonographers, and they talked about how they had no training whatsoever about breaking bad news to parents. And so this is such important information, and it saddens me, but this is all part of, I'm really pleased to be part of this Gold online conference where I'm able to share what I know. And what I've what I find is I like to try and keep it quite simple, because um, there's not a checklist that we can give out that says, right, here are all the things you must say and here are all the things you mustn't say, and if you just
Hmm.
check those boxes, you'll be fine. It's really about, I like to talk about reflecting on ourselves and where we come from, and being if we know about ourselves and we're confident about who we are, then we can move confidently in the world, and we can move confidently with bereaved parents. Bereaved parents often look to health and caring professionals and think, you will know what to do and say. You will know because you'll have this training and you will have
Hmm.
done this before. And I know that health and caring professionals are often not feeling confident and often feeling quite scared.
Right,
And they're terrified of saying the right thing or saying the wrong thing and
right.
making something worse. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some approaches to grief. And that's really about just having a framework. I really like the idea of having a framework to help guide us. And so I'm
Mhm.
just going to talk a little bit about grief theory, and some people might go, oh my gosh, that's the last thing I want to hear about. But it is, I promise you, it's interesting, and about how our approach to grief has changed over the last 20 to 30 years. And that makes a difference to how bereaved parents are experiencing the
Hmm.
death and subsequent grief for their child. And then I am going to talk a little bit about some approaches to, to grief around baby loss in particular, and there are some say this and don't say this. I do have some little gems there, I guess you might call it, and it's important, and I'll talk about this at the start of my presentation. I'm talking about a first world Western approach.
Hmm.
So what I'm talking about will relate to a lot of people, but it won't apply to everyone all over the world.
Right.
Some indigenous cultures will have a different approach to the the loss of a baby. Some developing nations will have a different approach. I'm talking about first world Western approaches, and it's really important to qualify that. Um, but yeah, I am going to talk a little bit about some of the things that parents report back. I talk to bereaved parents all the time, online and in person. Of course, this is New Zealand focused, but I'm also part of some international forums, and I'm in touch with international colleagues. And so the things that people say to parents that are not helpful but are not said in any malicious way, they're said
Hmm.
thinking that they will be helpful.
Right.
So like platitudes and euphemisms, that sort of thing. And I'm just going to reflect on our philosophy of care, thinking about what is my approach to this work and how can I do better? What are the things that I could do? What can I integrate into my work so that I am feeling confident about working with families? So I'm trying to keep it simple. I've always have a lot to say on this topic, an awful lot. And my plan is to make it so that delegates will end this presentation with some strategies they can use in their work.
It is
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you. Yes. So we will so have strategies we can use in our work and take with us. That sounds absolutely wonderful. And so, Vicky, one last question here before I let you go. So, what are you hoping what our delegates can take away? You know, you mentioned the strategy that they can take away. Anything else you want to share that you hope they will take with them?
Um, it's a, I think it's about having that hearing or having that conversation with someone who works in this area and having some validation for what they are doing. I'm sure that a lot of the delegates who join this conference and listen to my presentation will be doing really good work,
Hmm.
and so there'll be validation there for what they are doing, and there might be a little sigh of relief there. Okay, I do that, and that's
Hmm.
good. And also that they'll just take away some certainly some places to go where they can
Hmm.
find out more information, because of course I've only got a limited time,
Right.
and a couple of some words to avoid, and some words to use, um, because I find that's one of the main things that health professionals want to learn about is
Mhm.
tell me what to say and tell me what not to say. So I'll touch on that a little bit as well. So they'll leave with some tangible learning.
Thank you so much. Vicki, Culling, it was such a pleasure talking to you here today at Gold.
Thanks.
And Vicki's presentation, When a Baby Dies, Providing Care and Support, is part of the Gold Neonatal Online Conference. And for our listeners now, this presentation by Dr. Collings will be live on June 11th. And to find more information on this presentation and